I am Prashant. You are watching Educational Stuff YouTube channel. Today I will be discussing 4 different articles which were published in the Hindu newspaper. Today is 28th May 2020. If you are first to my channel, please do subscribe. Every day you will be having a discussion on Hindu editorials. Let's get started. There are 4 articles. The first article, which is regarding the swarm which was created by the Lotus. Second article deals with a moment of trust on the teacher, how they're gonna lift the lockdown and conduct different examinations. And third article, as we have already said, it is regarding China and Hong Kong. And fourth article, which is regarding the echo of migrants. As you can see from this picture, a Sharmik special train which is taking the migrants to their native places. The migrants are waiting. This is the present scenario in today's situation in India. This is regarding China and Hong Kong issue. China's effort to tighten grip on Hong Kong. Protest and violence returned to Hong Kong on May 24. In scenes that became all too familiar through much of last year, police used water cannons, tear gas and pepper spray as protest much descended into clashes between protesters, rights, police. The weekend's march has originally been planned ahead of a debate in Hong Kong's Legislative Council, a new nation anthem bill which would punish anyone who insulted Chinese anthem with up to 3 years in prison. The protest assumed significance when 2 days before much the Chinese central government stunned Hong Kong's protest pro-democratic parties by tabling a new national security bill as a National People's Congress bill at Beijing. The bill is expected to pass when the NPC's annual session ends on Thursday, urges Hong Kong's legislature to pass national security laws as soon as possible. Under the basic law that governed by Hong Kong since 1997, the SAR had a high degree of autonomy to enjoy executive, legislative and independent judicial power, including that of that final adjudication. Only defense and foreign affairs are to be handled by Beijing. Article 23 of the law requires Hong Kong to pass national security legislations, but the law makes clear it to Hong Kong's legislator that enjoy the power to make the penal laws, the bedrock of one country, two system model. In 2003, a national security bill allowing the shutting down of studious newspapers and carrying out warrantless searches was withdrawn after protests. Beijing now argues that the last year protests blamed on external forces underline the need of new law to curb acts and secessions on supervisions. The timing of the move may reveal its motivations. The pro-democracy camp swept November's district council elections seen as a referendum on the youth-driven protests. A record 70% turnout won the pro-democracy candidates 390 out of 452 seats. The elections demonstrated that public support for full democracy is growing. The new piece of legislation is aimed at tightening Beijing's grip over Hong Kong, but it may well up having the opposite effect. Hong Kong cannot be won without its people. This is regarding the rising tide. China efforts to tighten grip on Hong Kong without tough laws may not help its cause. In another article discussion, it is regarding the trust on the teachers. A public examination in the middle of novel coronavirus pandemic is hard to imagine. That is what the government of Tamil Nadu had decided. It will conduct a grade 10 board examination from June 15th. The announcement carries unusual resonance on that all arrangements have been made. Indeed, special arrangements have been made. These include spare seating to meet the medical requirement of physical distancing between candidates. No more than 10 will sit in a room to enable this happen. a ritual. Nothing can be remind the reader that we can refer to 15-year-old children. In a discourse of public exam, children mutate into candidates. Their names are replaced by roll numbers, schools become exam centers, and teachers turn into invigilators. Every child knows how to behave in the examination hall. All examinations follow a strict ritual that has remained unchanged for over a century. A board exam has a little to do with education and learning. The value it encourages children is to imbibe all negative. The prominent ones are fear of falling, sacrifice of joy, and self-competitiveness and submission to an opaque system. The urgency felt by Tamil Nadu government to take the class 10th examination in the middle of health emergency can be only understood as an expression of mindset rather than reasoning. The annual exam is seen as a culmination of academic calendar. The set pattern it follows ensures that the exam questions will have no intellectual substance. They all require remote momentary. If there is any real purpose these exams can serve, it is a select a few who can proceed further and eliminate the rest. It is in the middle of the path to consider. This standard argument does not fit the state of Tamil Nadu. The class 10th result last year placed more than 95% of total number of students who took the exam in the pass category. So the exams does not fulfill the structural purpose of the state, especially the northern states might have such a reducing the number so that the limited infrastructure for the higher or plus 2 stage provides sufficient. The meaning to refresh. It is a job of teachers to ensure that the early child is all set for the kind of questions that are asked. Teachers are rightly complaining that the notice period given for the June exam is too short to refresh the children. By refresh, they mean to activate children's rote memory into performance mode. Classes have been suspended just when the teachers have completed winding up to the root more memory key. 3 months later, the key had shed its tension. If you want a toy to dance out the programmed steps on the required date and time, given a more time. That is what the teachers are saying. Considering that highly promised professional and intellectual role, they are right. Had they enjoyed same real autonomy in teaching and assessment, they would have told the government not to worry about using exam scores to sort children into subject streams. So what exactly is the board asking us to notice by highlighting the micro differences in their percentage? A similar point can be made about the tagline claiming that girls outshine boys just because the girls' pass percentage is slightly higher. Crisis and change. Some disasters teach lessons. The experience of going through the crisis can create the desire for reform. But it's hard to imagine that the novel virus crisis will create energy for examination reform. A system so well established as the board exams do not easily yield to pressure for improvement. The board system has successfully resisted the criticism and recommendations articulated by countless committees and individuals. Even a minor improvement in the exam system will demand an effort sustained over several years, during which the regime may change and the officer in charge may get shifted to retire. The next step will be to start trusting the teachers and nurture the growth of school-based system of evaluation. This is regarding a moment of trust on the teacher as a novel coronavirus crisis at the right time to create the energy for examination reform. The echo of migrant food stalls and the silence on policy. When we hear the word migration, we think Kerala and West Asia or United States or West. However, the number of Indians who have migrated over the past decades to these geographies is compared vastness and the movement within the country. This is nearly 3 times the official figures which are being cited now. Across the world, every year people migrate for work, livelihood, marriage, seeking refuge, business, and even a peace of mind. A number that is growing. Last December, an economist provided figures based on the 2011 national census showing that the number of internal migrants had grown by another 100 million, or that a third of India's population, one in every three Indians, are migrants. The figures are even more daunting when one realizes that many of them are from poor states of Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, and Odisha, although Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana send substantial numbers, while there are smaller groups from northeast. Most of them are unskilled and semi-skilled labor or skilled labor. Apart from anecdotal social and political science, the scale of movement across India within states, not just across interstate border, is breathtaking. They are the people who are given 4-hour warning of first lockdown, which has been followed by successive extensions by the center. When they found no transport, train and bus, they choose to walk. They walked by day on the highways and they walked by night. They walked on the broken roads to avoid police beatings and barricades, and they tried to hitch rides on empty trucks and even cement dumpers. They rested on the night under the stars, sometimes on railway tracks. So fearful were they of Sarkar and to harm would come to them, their loved ones, if they were caught. That is a fear of and a loathing for the authority that ordinary people nourish this country. But love of home was greater than the both. Ultimately, this desperate longing for home killed a number of them. One group of 14 most violently and tragically on the railway track. Frugal means of riots. Some vegetables and fruits lay scattered after the dance of death, along with their many scandals and clothes after being mowed down by the goods. Trains as they slept the sleep of the exhausted, and then they did. Use of military. It is important to dwell on this because some extraordinary publicly expressed opinions by some who have advocated the use of armed forces to tackle such situations. The idea has been that the military should open its sprawling and efficient networks, or processed and personal. Such views are being aired even as standoffs were continuing to take place and still continue between India, Chinese troops in Sikkim and Ladakh, thousands of kilometers apart, underlying the core task before an army. A former Navy chief advocating the idea of the armed forces should be at the heart of massive relief operations. The armed forces have tremendous resource. They have organized and jump into the blindfolded and render instant succor. This is the laudable wish, but spoken with a casualness for the value of human life. It is not the issue whether the army personnel have personal protection equipment or not. If they do, and these may be to handle biological attacks. Such remarks reveal the usual knee-jerk response to the use of military during crisis as a first resort and not the last. Not only that underlines the complete lackness of comprehension of complex dynamics of migration and why people leave or return. As the economic cited earlier, internal migration, the movement of the people within a country, results in more efficient allocation of human resources to sectors and the region where they are better utilized. This is the time to decentralize the political power and arm the states with a greater decision-making capacity. There are 4 things which need to be done as a flight home. The flight from nowhere have shown to waiting distressed country. Second, to rebuild the rural economy based on building the household. That is the key and target. Use of Swachh Bharat network to strengthen cottage industries, which has been killed by huge industry, and give the later incentives to buy from rural manufacturers and thus generate rural employment. There should be a plan to formalize work and home and design a migration plan, support people to work in the states or near the cluster of villages so that they are not far from home, especially after this wrenching experience. The move funding from a current planning which benefits corporates to states, panchayats to municipalities. In addition, increase allocation on health, women, children and education to 20% of nation's budget. This is regarding the echo of migrant food stall and silence on a policy. There are four things that need to be done in the country in the wake of pandemic crisis. We'll be discussing it on the article. It is regarding the Lotus in Western Parts. Just last week, Eastern India was battered by one of the most powerful cyclones in the decades, and now even the hundreds of lives are lost every day to the coronavirus. Another danger lurks the nation's west. A burgeoning lotus swarm in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and even every part of Madhya Pradesh threatens to amplify into agrarian disaster. The desert lotus, as the species, is bane of agriculture. Monitoring and tackling period outbreaks in the manufacturing insects are among the objectives of Lotus Warning Organization in Jodhpur. There are 13 Lotus upsurges from 1964 to 1997, and after 2010 there were no large-scale breeding. Once a significant outbreak starts, it lasts for about 2 years, and then there is a quietus for about 8 years. It is a testimony to its devastating potential that an agrarian piece of legislation, the East Punjab Agriculture Pest, Disease and Noxious Weeds Act 1949, a provision whereby a district collector can call upon any male person not below the age of 14 years residents in the district to render all possible assistance, and there is a potential improvement for failure to abide by the law. Antiquated as it may sound, it is remembered that the humanity's old blights, plague, pestilence will never truly be eliminated. The breeding lotus, which threatens farming, are an indirect fallout of the warming Indian Ocean, as some meteorologicals suggest. Last year there were fear that the monsoon may fall short because of El Nino or warming the equatorial Pacific. However, there is an extreme flip. By July, it was evident that a positive Indian Ocean dipole or relatively higher temperature in the Western Indian Ocean was in the works. This led to record-breaking rainfall in India, thus a cause for cheer, as well as in Eastern Africa. But moist African deserts precipitated lotus breeding, and favorable rain breeding winds aid that the transport towards India. On the other hand, coronavirus quarantines meant that routine coordination activities involving India, Pakistan and Afghanistan regarding spraying pesticides were halted. While it is some comfort that there is now a limited standing crop in the India, forecasts are for good rains in Rajasthan and paradoxically conducive conditions for lotus breeding during the sowing season. This makes it necessary to abandon any territorial blame game and focus on policies that will ensure equitable, sustainable future. This is regarding the lotus in the western parts, add a new dimension to other disasters facing India. This is yet another article this is from op-ed page. This article was written by Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, the Vice President of India, regarding the enjoying the fruits of their labor. Today, India is leading producer of variety of agriculture and a lead producer and exporter of some of them. This is due to relentless hard work and efforts of the farmer against the odds. Farmers toil day and night throughout winter and summer, whether or not they get adequate returns, but they are not the masters of the price of their toil. As a son of a farmer, I have been witness to the trials and tribulations of farmer. If any class of economic agents of our country have been denied the constitutional right of freedom of a trade, it is farmers. They don't have freedom of selling their produce even in their neighborhood. Remunerative price is still a mirage for them. Their farm incomes are at the mercy of markets, middlemen and money lenders. For every rupee that a farmer makes, others of the supply chain gets more. Both farmer and consumers are the sufferers and exploitative procurement and marketing of farm produce. Despite increasing public investment, the irrigation and other infrastructure, the steadily rising institutional credit given to farmer, and minimum support price due to the efforts of various governments over the years, farmers are shackled when it comes to selling their produce. There are restrictions on farmer. This exploitation has its roots on the Bengal famine of 1943, World War II, and the droughts and food storages in 1960. The Essential Commodity Act 1955 and the Agriculture Produce Market Committee (APMC) Acts of the states and are the principal source of violation of the rights of farmers to sell their produce at their price of their choice. These two laws severely restrict the options for the farmers to sell their produce. Farmers continue to be the victims of the buyers. This is the principal cause of their exploitation. Renowned farm scientist M.S. Swaminathan has long argued for the right of farmers to sell their produce as they deem for it. The country is still far from ensuring efficient value chains for farm produce for the want of required infrastructure like cold storage, stocking facilities, and transport of perishable commodities. Often farmers are forced to dump their produce on the roads or offer the cattle. Farmers are the cornerstones of food security in the country. We have come a long way from the ship to mouth existence under the PL 480 program of the US to begin the leading producer of many kinds of farm produce, but farmers have not got their due. All that they have been getting the platitudes or ceremonial occasions and in the legislature during the customary debates on the plight. Farmers were assured that restrictions on the freedom of marketing should be removed. Given the economic disparities in the country, the interests of consumers need to be protected, but should that have to be cost the producers of very commodities that the consumers need. For various reasons, a balance in this regard could be struck. The restrictive trade and marketing policies being practiced with respect to agricultural price have substantially eroded the income of farmers. A study on agricultural policies in India by the Indian Council of Research and International Economic Relations Organization, Economic Cooperation and Development 2018, co-authored by renowned farm economist Ashok Gulati, was published with startling revelations. There is a much awaited freedom, while all and sundry have reiterated over the years that something must be done to the farmers. The first formal actionable announcement on doing away with the restrictions on the marketing freedom of farmers came only now. Further, the Prime Minister Modi's announcement of 20 lakh crore stimulus to rev up the economy unveiled details of the package for agriculture and allied sectors. Apart from the approximately 4 lakh crore support package for farmers and allied sectors aimed at improving infrastructure and enhancing credit support, the most welcome feature for this package is a firm commitment to revising the Essential Commodity Act and APMC laws. The revision of these restrictive laws is long overdue and will remove the hurdles that the farmers face in getting a remunerative price for their produce by giving them the more options to sell. This long wait revisions are undertaken with so care and responsibility so that no space or scope is left for the farmers to be exploited yet again, and this rewrite should be done at the earliest while allowing several buyers to directly access the produce from the farmers. A strong and effective network of farm producers organization should be created to enhance the bargaining power of farmers. This will ensure that the individual farmers are not exploited. An effective law on a contract farming is also the need of the hour to secure incomes of the farmers beside enabling private investments. Dr. Gulati in recent article termed this announcement as a 1991 movement for agriculture. This was described in yesterday's newspaper. Yet another unique feature of the package has been its comprehensive towards improving the incomes of farmers through a range of activities. A study by National Institute of Agriculture Extension Management has revealed that 35,000 farmer suicides examined, there is no farmer who had supplementary incomes from dairy or poultry. The huge support to animal husbandry and fisheries in this stimulus package underlines the need for diversifying the income sources of farmers. This benefited both farmers and consumers. It is a time to allow all the farmers to sell their produce anywhere for their benefit. All the stakeholders should be taken on board while revising restrictive agri-marketing laws. During this pandemic, many are working from home, but farmers have no such option as they have to work on the fields. Despite the lockdown, they continue to sow wheat, paddy, pulses, etc. In fact, farmers' output is greater than what it was last 5 years. Our farmers, the pride of our country, deserve the long-awaited freedom to market their produce at a place of their choice. It should become a reality in the earliest. This is regarding the freedom as the farmers desire to market the produce at the places of their choice. This is regarding helping supply chains recover. The Indian government has announced a sizable fiscal stimulus, which some commentators believe can help revive the economy. There are, however, good reasons to doubt this belief. Much of the decline in the output is due to supply chain disruptions generated by the lockdown. Government spending can do a little to elevate this. Putting money in the hands of people can increase the demand for goods but cannot increase the supply of goods and services. In a modern economics, the production of goods happens through complex supply chains to traverse geographical boundaries. Upstream sectors like mining produce metals that are in turn used to produce machines. These machines are used to sow seeds, harvest crops, the transport fuel. Finally, the harvested crop are used to demand sectors to produce flour and bread. At each step, machines and labor combine to produce, which are the inputs for the sectors of further downstream. There should be a reduction in the output. Under the lockdown, numerous inputs have not moved from the producers to their users. These disruptions may not be at the first generation to reduce in the consumer goods like bread. However, the availability of consumer goods will begin to decline as the bakers run out of the flour and mills exhaust for their stocks and wheats. The supply chain disruptions are going to be amplified by labor shortage as workers remain at home. Countries like India are likely to experience a great reduction in the output in this count than say Europe or US because of the higher labor intensity of production. Poorer countries are less likely to be able to substitute lockdown labor with a capital because of a breadth of capital in these nations. As economies emerge out the lockdown, entrepreneurs, workers and consumers must adjust the new reality. The world supply chain must adapt. First, firms may, for instance, choose to source out the input from suppliers in their geographical proximity to minimize the risk of the future disruptions. This involves building productive capacity at new locations, all of which requires investments fueled by savings. Furthermore, the investments can be guided by the price signals. Within the market economy, the movements of prices provided by the incentives and information needed to adapt and grow. As economist Ronald Coase put it, prices are a bundle of information wrapped in the incentive. As the prices of some inputs rise, the buyers of the input look for alternate suppliers, and firms which did not hitherto produce the good have an incentive to do so. Why stimulus package won't help? Unfortunately, market adjustment process are likely to be disrupted by government stimulus package. Government spends by printing money, raising debt and increasing taxes irrespective of the way in which the expenditure is funded. Resources are transferred from private entrepreneurs to government bureaucrats. When government prints money, they draw resources through inflation. Bureaucrats tend to be less efficient than profit motivated firms in allocating scarce resources. Bureaucrats have little incentive or information to bring about the supply chain adjustments necessary for revived growth. As the stimulus package age kicks in, economic efficiency is likely to decline, so as are the chances of timely recovery of outputs. So what can the government do? The experience on the West in Germany after the World War II had a useful lesson. Beginning mid-1944, Allied bombing disrupted the German supply chain by targeting bottleneck sectors like electric power generation. This destruction of supply chain devastated the German economy. Per person, food production fell of about half of its per-war level. 2 years later, this changed after the hard lifted prices control and cut taxes. West German entrepreneurs re-established the thriving supply chain through which goods went from upstream sectors to final consumers. The recent supply chain disruptions are likely to last long. The path to recover lies in cutting government expenditure, removing price control, and opening up the trade. This is regarding the supply chain recovery. It is not a fiscal stimulus, but cutting government expenditure, removing price control, and opening up a trade with this help. And that's it for the end of today's discussion. If you are first to my channel, I request you to please subscribe and share this link, and please do comment if you have any queries. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.